Hello everybody, Darren Cross here. Welcome to Module 4, and this is the assignment video for Module 4 of MBA 661. So in this module, what we're going to do is we're going to pick up in the paper after the generic strategy, and we're going to do the first part of the SWOT analysis, which is the intro of the SWOT in general, all the way down through the internal analysis. So it's going to include the value chain analysis, and we're going to go all the way through the internal. So the idea here is that we will stop right here before the external. Okay, so what we're going to do is, this is going to seem a little bit redundant for you, I think, and I just want you to get used to it, because it's, you know, when people are doing this, I think sometimes they actually, hang on one sec. Looks like my laptop is going to die here. I need to plug it in. Hang on. Sorry about that. So it looks like it feels really redundant, and it feels maybe counterintuitive. So I want to just talk to you about how to actually work through this stuff, okay? So let's look at this. Spend a few minutes here. So this is the intro to the actual, get used to the essay method here. So what we're doing is you're actually introducing what you're going to talk about, and then you're going to, if there's any elements that relate to it, you mention those elements, and then you make a statement, some kind of a transitional statement that, you know, you're going to talk about that later. Okay? So this is the intro to the SWOT. So you want to say, hey, this is what a SWOT is, and cite it if you have some cites or some citation. You can actually cite the white paper that I have on here. I think I have an upload that actually goes through the process. So you could say a SWOT analysis is a tool that allows whatever it is, right? Then you say a SWOT analysis includes an internal and external analysis. Here's a transitional sentence. Following is a SWOT analysis for ABC Corporation. Okay. Then when you get to the goal, and you're going to do this kind of a thing for many of the deals that we're talking about. I'll show you as we go along. Then when you get to the goal, go back to the strategic goal and put this there. That's the reason why I kind of hammered you guys a little hard. I wanted you to stay super focused on this, because one of the things that helps companies to be successful is to always have the goal in mind, and see this goal is tied to the strategy. That's what it's all about. Once you understand what your strategy is, your goals are always aligned and tied to that, okay? Then you go into this is an intro for the scan, right? So you talk about the environmental scan. The environmental scan is looking at the internal and external elements that influence the company's strategy. And then you could say, you know, for our purposes, we're going to do a value chain analysis, a pest, and a 5-force analysis. And then you say a transitional sentence. Following is the environmental scan for ABC Corp. You're going to do the same thing here. So we said environmental scan. This is the first part where you're actually talking about the internal part. When in next week's assignment, or in the next assignment, we're actually going to do the external part, right? So the idea here is that we're going to introduce the internal. So the purpose of an internal analysis is to look at the parts related to a company that impact their strategy. For our purposes, we're going to do the value chain analysis. Following is the value chain analysis, or you can say what the value chain is too. Let me start over here. So the internal analysis looks at the internal part. For our purposes, we're going to do the value chain analysis, which looks at 9 elements. Go through the videos and the ancillary things that tell you what's going on there. And then you say, these are the elements of the value chain analysis, primary and secondary activities. Following is the value chain for ABC Corp. See, we're hammering down, we're just nailing down, we're drilling down into each of these things. You're going to go primary activities, and we're talking in general. We're talking value chain in general. You're not going to talk about your company here, and you're not even going to talk about your company here, right? So primary activities are those activities that specifically or indirectly create value. Primary activities include, what are the primary activities? What are they? So go in and talk about them. And then say, following are the primary activities for ABC Corp. Now you can start to talk about your company. So now we're going to go in and talk about inbound logistics. Inbound logistics are those elements that relate to how you receive, store, and distribute those materials before you actually get to building them, right? And I'm not going to go into each of those elements here because it's talked about in the value chain, the ancillary value chain videos that I've provided here and in the material, but talk about the inbound logistics. Hone in on what's going on with your company, and talk about whether or not you actually want to note at the end whether or not there's a strength or weakness in this area. Now, in this internal part, remember that it's going to be a strength or a weakness. We're not looking at opportunities or threats yet. Strengths and weaknesses are those things that we find in the internal environment. We are going to focus on processes, though. What are the ways in which they do that? What advantages do they inherently have? Now, I will make this distinction now just to help you out. If you are dealing with a service-oriented company, see, inbound logistics, when Michael Porter started talking about it, was really kind of focused on manufacturing. But inbound logistics can relate to service-oriented companies. For instance, if you are let's say a doctor's office, that's why they have the intake process. The doctors have to know, once you get to the operations, the doctors have to know what it is that they're supposed to do. So they go through all of this intake stuff to kind of understand what's necessary. And that might be how you need to focus on this. So let's say you're a CPA firm. This intake process is the process of understanding and gathering all of the information that's needed to actually do the returns. So just think about that. If you're not a manufacturing company, this is really focused on the intake process. Now, you may be both. Think about fast food or retail organizations. Fast food is a great example. There are some things that happen that get the product there, right? So does McDonald's, for instance, have any specific advantage in the area of getting all of the food that they need to get and storing it and inventory management and that kind of thing? But then also, when customers come in, there's a flow, there's a process, and we have to worry about that. You can't just say McDonald's does great at getting their food in and not address what happens in the ordering process. And if you guys have ever been in a line where it seems a little frustrating, you're standing in line and you see that, or Walmart is a good example of this too. You see people just standing around and you're like, this line is getting longer and longer and longer. Do they have a process by which they automatically put people on another register or something like that? These are things that we have to pay attention to, and the flow of the customer. For instance, if you go to McDonald's, do they give you a bag first, and then they start making the food, and then they put it on a tray, or whatever it is, right? The deal is they do something first, and then they do something else, and then they do something else to get it ready to deliver to you. So the tray part is an essential part of that, and you best believe that in those types of organizations, it's something that they think about often. Then we get to operations, which is, what do they actually do? This is, if it's manufacturing, it's how do they turn all of these raw materials into the thing that they are actually trying to sell. So in manufacturing, it's making the product, and if it's a service-oriented business, then it has to do with what they actually do. So this is doing the tax return or doing the operation of the procedure that a doctor might be doing. And then finally, we have to think about outbound logistics, which are, okay, so once we have made this product, this is manufacturing, once we've made this product, how do we get it to people? And that matters. How you get something to someone matters. So there might be advantage in that. Think about Amazon. They're great at logistics. Amazon can get you something today if you need to because of the distribution channels that they have and the centers that they have all over the world. And you can't do. Not every company can do that, but is there a specific advantage here? You have to think about that. In service-oriented companies, like maybe a CPA's office, you're concerned about how this is actually going to get out to the customer. Are we mailing? Does that make sense with the target audience that you're actually going to be looking at? Or do they email? And if they email, think about this. If they email, this is financial information. is there something unique about the way that they email? Can you send financial information over the internet or through a non-secure method? So you got to think about that kind of thing. And these things might not exactly match up. That's fine. What I'm getting at is that you display the type of language that gives me the idea that you understand what's going on. Marketing and sales. Marketing and sales are very, very important. What I want you to talk about is, do they understand who their target market is? And is their message and their marketing mix aligned with their target market? Because here's the thing. If they are not tuned in, if they don't know who their target market is, which I can tell you, my experience is that many companies, many small businesses don't know who their target market is. But if they do, that's the first step. Do they understand who their target market is? And if you know, say who it is, and then say that their marketing mix is aligned with it or not. That's really those are the two elements that I'm concerned about. So let's look at this, for instance. If you watch Matlock, you'll see that in the middle of the day, you get a lot of commercials for catheters and hearing aids and things like that. Now, you'll also notice that a lot of these companies, they understand who their target market is. These are people who aren't employed still. So they're retired and they're sitting at home and they're watching Matlock. And not only that, but they can't hear. So I don't know if you've noticed, but those commercials are super loud, even if it's for the catheter. And they have the telephone numbers very, very large on the screen. There's no websites on there. They don't say, go to getrascal.com or getyourcatheter.com. You may see that start to emerge, but for the most part, they realize that these types of customers are not the types of customers who are going online. And then they say things like, you should be able to, your Medicare should cover this. So these are also price-conscious customers. So this is the kind of thing that I'm talking about. Do you know who their target market is? Do you get the sense that they know? And are they operating in a way that gives you the impression that they understand who their target market is? That's really what we're after here. For service, we're talking about what is the process by which customers ensure that they're giving, or the company ensures that they're giving the customer what it is that they actually ask for, right? So focus on the process. Do they have a process in place that makes sure that what the customer wants, they get? And then also, what would happen in the case that something doesn't go well? So all of these things are like the indoctrination process, training consumers how things actually happen. What happens in the relationship once someone actually buys something? That's the beginning of the relationship, right? What is the customer service and support? What are those processes? Focus on process and not philosophy. I don't want you to go in and say, ABC Corporation really wants to take care of their customers. In theory, it can be assumed that all companies want to take care of their consumers. So you're not assessing anything by telling me that. What I want you to do is I want you to go in and tell me the extent to which they are good or bad at taking care of their customers. And the way that you can assess that is by looking at their process. Okay? Then you go into support activities. Now, this is the other side so there are two types of activities, right? Primary and support. There are 5 primary, and then there are 4 support activities. So now you're getting back to the general discussion. What are the purpose of support activities? What are the support activities? And then a transitional statement. Following are the support activities for ABC Corp. When we get into infrastructure, so this is an introduction, introductory paragraph, basically for the second part of the value chain analysis. So when we're talking about infrastructure, what we're saying is, what is the essence of the organizational structure? We're talking about organizational structure here. Okay, so what is the structure? Is it a mechanized or is it an organic structure? Is it, is it fluid with the outside world, or does it have to be rigid? Is it a traditional company? Where are decisions made? Is it decentralized or centralized? And this is it's gonna matter based upon the type of organization it is and who they serve and what their customers demand and things like that. What about the culture? Is it serious or is it whimsical? Are they, is there any indication that their management is good or bad? Focus in on the management and the structure and how decisions and information and resources flow throughout that organization. Human resources management, I want you to describe the HR process. If they don't have very many customers, that's fine. You can say they don't really have much of an HR process. They need to be concerned about this as they grow. I want you to demonstrate that you understand what's going on. So the HR process has to do with the company on one side and a pool of recruits on another. How do they actually, if it's a bigger company, how do they come to understand what kind of people they need? How do they understand whether or not they have those people? How do they actually design the jobs in a way that is aligned with the strategy? And is there something unique in the way that they recruit, hire, and train and develop? This can be a one-paragraph thing, but I want you to think about this. How do they deliver benefits? How do they make sure that people are promoted and move throughout the organization? So get a feel for that. And I'm not asking for you to do a bunch of research, and I'm not even going to verify any of this stuff. I just want to get some kind of an idea that you understand what the process is in general, and that you can kind of fit your company into it and get some kind of an assessment. If you are really trying to help out a real life company, then the extent to which you are truthful and accurate is going to matter. But if you're not and you're just trying to get through this paper, that's fine with me too. Just demonstrate that you understand what's going on here. Okay, technology development. What technology does your company use? Remember, this is internal, so we're not going to talk about anything outside of the company. What we're talking about is what goes on inside of your company. What kind of technology does your company use? Think about how information flows throughout the company, and do they use any kind of technology in order to do that? Is it aligned with their strategy? It's more than a computer, though. What other kind of tools do they have? What is the, in what ways do they use technology? Do they use it with these outside value chain processes? So in other words, are they using it for marketing and, managing flow and inbound logistics and all of this stuff? And then think about the actual product itself. Is there technology that they use in the actual creating and delivering of their product? So hone in on that, and I think that you can do this in a paragraph. And finally, you get to procurement. Procurement is a little bit different. Where we were talking about inbound logistics, it was about the process by which they actually come up with all the raw materials that they need. This is more purchasing. So do they actually have relationships with vendors that are going to matter? Do they have a process that actually helps them better than anybody else? How do they source? Do they source locally or do they source globally? Do they have relationships that allow them to access things better? The main difference between this and the inbound logistics is that this is about the relationships of actually acquiring this stuff. And then inbound logistics is about how do we manage these actual things once we get them. Once they're in the pipeline, how do we actually manage them? How do we receive, store, and distribute them in the production process? So, do we buy 1,000 hamburgers, but 800 of them sit until, and we have to get rid of some because we're not managing inventory well. Okay, so that's the primary difference here. Now, one thing that I want you to say, and that's the end, that's basically everything for the value chain. And one thing that I want to say here, just to help you out, when you're going through here, it could be a frustrating process because it might not match up exactly how you want it to match up. That's fine. The thing that I want you to keep in mind is that your goals could be different here. So it could be a deal where you really just want to help this company, and so you really want to dig in and get the most up-to-date, accurate information. Or you could be just trying to demonstrate that you know what's going on with these terms. You might be talking about a company that you're actually starting, and so some of these things aren't necessarily there yet. I want you to put something in each of these areas, and it may not group up exactly, but the idea here is at least you can communicate to me that you understand what these things are and how they really relate to your company. So I'm not going to gig you hard on that. Where I can tell you people often go astray is that at the end of these things, they're not identifying whether or not there's an inherent strength or weakness in that area. Here's where this is going to come in. So in the internal part, we're looking for strengths and weaknesses. And then in the external part, we're looking for opportunities and threats. And then guess what? We're going to come down here to where we are summarizing your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and they're going to come from up above. So that's the reason why I want you to be thoughtful about that. You're actually trying to keep your eye open for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. If you feel like you're just struggling, by all means, reach out to me. Text me or email me and say, hey, I'm struggling. Can we have a conversation? We'll set up a call, and I'll help you work through some of these things individually with your specific case. So don't sit here and frustrate yourself. Just do what you can do. And of course, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. Good luck, everyone.